जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन। यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर सत हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस अभय चरणारविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा विनोद की जय। श्री श्री गौर निताय की जय। श्री श्री जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा श्री सुदर्शन की जय। निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री गुरु गौरांग की जय। ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च रूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादां सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। नमो ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। मुखं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघायते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरून् दीनतारणं। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदान्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामने गौरद्विषे नमः। Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakhyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam Aradhyo Bhagavan Vrajeshatanayas Tadhama Vrindavanam Ramya Kachid Upasana Vrajavatu Vargenaya Kalpita Srimad Bhagavatam Pramanamamalam Prema Pumartho Mahan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhurmatamidam Tatradara Naparaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare 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 Krishna. So I'm very happy to come here to the ISKCON Cultural Center, Girinagar, no? This is Girinagar. Kumar Swami layout. Okay. I came here for the opening of the new temple, and after that, this is the first time I'm getting the opportunity to come here. It's a very beautiful temple that has come up thanks to the hard work and sincere devotion of all of you, led by Narahari Chaitanya Prabhu. I think he's come back from America, I think. So I've been speaking a lot on Lord Jagannath since I came to Bangalore and the Rath Yatra, since that was the topic that was relevant. But now that the Rath Yatra has already begun, I thought I would speak on a slightly different topic, something that is a little philosophical, and I hope that you will not fall asleep. But I will try to give some examples and illustrate this. Now, I think some of you have probably heard this term, Nyaya Sutras. Nyaya means logic, and Sutra means a short word. So a sutra in Vedic teachings is a very concise, short expression of some very deep or large truth. When something has to be expressed very succinctly, in brief, then you may call it a sutra. So it is a concise and catchy expression of a general truth or principle. Now such things do exist in every branch of knowledge. How many of you have studied science? At least till 10th standard, 12th standard you have studied. So did you not study first of all the definition of so many things? What is an atom? What is a molecule? You have studied? So when you study the subject, you have to first study these basic definitions, because after that there will be a lot of information that is based on that. So if you do not clear about this basic principle of what is an atom, what is molecule, then you will not understand anything further. And books are written on atom, molecule, but the whole thing is expressed in just one sentence or two sentences. Similarly, in science and mathematics, especially science, you try to express some very deep principle or a theory or a law in just one equation, E equal to mc squared. So there are so many such equations which very concisely explain some very deep principle. Now, to understand that principle, big experts and scientists and Nobel laureates, they write books and books on this topic. On just this one phrase, E equals mc squared. Concise, very short, but so much is written on that. Similarly, in any subject, if you study economics, first of all, they will define many basic things. What is economics? If you look at law, any lawyers here? No lawyers? Okay. So when you study law, then the first thing you study are definitions. You take anything, they will define certain things. And then there is a whole universe that opens up. And just on that definition, there will be books written explaining that, giving a commentary on those definitions or on those basic points. Commentaries will be written on that. But the basic point is expressed in very brief. Similarly, even in everyday life, we are accustomed to proverbs. Yes, you have all learned proverbs in different languages. English, maybe in your mother tongue, Kannada, whichever language, Hindi. For example, grapes are sour. How many of you have heard of this? Grapes are sour? Raise your hands. Yes. Now, in just 3 words, grapes are sour. Now you have all heard this from childhood, so you know what it means and for whom to use it and in which context. Yes? So when somebody is complaining or criticizing somebody, then the third person will say, grapes are sour. So behind those 3 words is a story. The story of a fox who was hungry, who went to look for grapes, who was hungry and he saw a vine of grapes. He started jumping and jumping, could not get it. Finally he said, oh, the grapes are sour. So there is a purport to it. There is a lesson, a moral to be learned from this story. So every time we want to utilize the knowledge from that story, we don't have to repeat the whole story. We just say 3 words, grapes are sour. But based on those 3 words, because we have studied it, we know it, a whole story comes up, we can understand many things. So you don't need to explain, because everybody has heard this phrase, grapes are sour, or grass is greener on the other side. So these are examples of how proverbs have been used by all of us in day-to-day life. So similarly, for expressing Vedic teachings, which are so deep, so profound, naturally there is some need to concisely explain things and to define certain things. For example, we have the Vedanta Sutra. You have all heard of Vedanta Sutra? There is a Prasthanatraya. There is the Shrutis, like the Upanishads, the Vedas. There is a Smritis, like the Puranas and the Itihasas. And there is the Vedanta Sutra, the Vedanta. Now the Vedanta, the conclusion of all the Vedic knowledge, that's called Vedanta. So that conclusion of all the Vedic knowledge is expressed in very short forms, almost about 250 such sutras. Vedanta sutras have been expressed by Vyasadeva. Can you mention 1 or 2 of the more famous sutras from Vedanta Sutra, which Srila Prabhupada has quoted many times? Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Atha. So, Brahma Jigyasa, now that you have got this human form of life, inquire about the absolute truth. So, athato brahma jigyasa, ataha brahma jigyasa. So, because of that one short sentence, so many things have to be explained. Many of you who are preachers, you will give a whole lecture on this one statement, athato brahma jigyasa. Why it is important to inquire about the absolute truth. So what Vyasadeva has done, he has compiled approximately 250 such very short sayings, which are called sutras, which encapsulate all the Vedic knowledge. And he has given such very short statements. Any others apart from this? Janmadyasya yatah. He from whom everything emanates. Now this needs a lot of explanation. Or Anandamayobhyasat. The Supreme Lord is Anandamaya, always full of bliss. So like this, there are many sutras. Now, for those who understand, who are very knowledgeable, they can immediately grasp it. But for those who don't know, it needs explanation. And even for those who are knowledgeable, still a lot of commentaries are required. So big scholars will write so many commentaries on each sutra. In fact, no sampradaya was considered bona fide unless it had a commentary written on the Vedanta Sutra. Because what Vyasadeva has said is very brief. So now you have to explain it so that everyone can understand it. So that needs a scholar. Just to read it, anyone can read. To get some understanding, small, short understanding, you'll get something, maybe right, wrong. But then a scholar will explain very elaborately everything. So our Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, Baladev Vidya Bhushan, has written a commentary on the Vedanta Sutra which is called Govinda Bhashya. And Prabhupada mentions this in the beginning of his Bhagavad Gita as it is. He dedicates this book to Govinda Bhashya of Baladev Vidya Bhushan. So in this way we see the concept of sutras is very common not only in mundane knowledge of the modern world, but especially in the Vedic knowledge. So just as there are sutras for Vedanta, knowledge of Vedanta, similarly there are sutras in many other areas of Vedic knowledge, including logic. But here this is logic. Sometimes it is just ordinary logic of this world, which can be called worldly wisdom. And sometimes these short sutras or aphorisms have a very deep philosophical purport to it. They are meant to explain some philosophical points. So Srila Prabhupada frequently used logic or Nyaya to illustrate or explain philosophical principles and worldly wisdom. Not only philosophical principles, but even sometimes things of this world can be explained effectively. These aphorisms of logic, hence, are very useful, fun tools for deepening and clarifying philosophical understanding. Some time ago, I was with some devotees, parents, as well as children, and we were talking about various ways in which to educate children, both smaller children as well as teenagers. And one of the useful things that children should be taught is Proverbs. You teach them Proverbs in different languages, and including such sutras. And that's why I've written here fun tools. So if you want to explain difficult concepts, not just to children, but even to adults sometimes. This, like for example, Shakha Chandra Nyaya, and we'll discuss it as we go on today and also tomorrow morning. So when we see this, you can explain so many things, we can understand so many things. Even a child or a teenager will be able to understand some deep philosophical truths by these examples, by these Nyaya Sutras. So Srila Prabhupada has employed many of them in his purports, in his lectures, in his conversations. So I will take one by one the main sutras, the Nyaya Sutras that Srila Prabhupada has used. And we'll talk about them briefly. So the first one is called the Kupa Manduka Nyaya. How many of you have heard of this? The frog in the well. You may not know the Sanskrit term Kupa Manduka Nyaya, but you've heard of the frog in the well. So that has become like a proverb now. Frog in the well. Oh, he's just a frog in the well. So when you want to criticize somebody for being very narrow-minded and inexperienced, so you say, oh, he's a frog in the well. Now somebody else who doesn't know this will think, what are you saying? You are calling him a frog. What is the meaning of this? But when he's aware of the proverb, then he understands. So just like behind every proverb there is a story, so behind these Nyaya Sutras also there is a little story. So you don't have to explain the whole story every time. So just saying Kupa Manduka Nyaya, automatically the story is included. So what was the story? The story is that one time there was a frog who lived inside a well. And he had never gone outside the well. His whole life was spent inside the well. He was born there, and all the 6 stages of life, his transformations were happening there. He did his college schooling, everything inside that well. All that was there. So he had no experience of anything outside the well. So that was his whole universe. He had no clue that there is anything outside the well. So one time, another frog who lived near the sea came there. Now this well was not too far from the sea. But since the frog had never gone out, he had never seen the sea. So there was this other frog who was living near the shore of the sea, and he was hopping here and there, and somehow he happened to fall into this well. So initially, the frog in the well thought, oh, this is some food that has come for me, some new prey that has come. But soon he realized, oh, this is also a frog. He looks slightly different from what I look, but he's a frog. So he asked the frog, where have you come from? So he said, I've come from the sea, from the shore of the sea. Shore of the sea, what is that? He said, sea, what is the meaning of sea? He said, sea or ocean is a place where there is a lot of water. So since this frog in the well had never seen any body of water outside of his well, he could not imagine what this ocean is like. And he was very proud because he thought he knows everything. Because he knows every nook and corner of the well. After all, he had spent his whole life in the well. So he had examined every little part of the wall of the well, the water, the contents of the water, everything. So he says, how big is your sea? Is it bigger than my well? So the second frog laughed and said, it is much bigger. So how much bigger? No, it can't be. Nothing can be bigger than my well. It is biggest. No, there is. So okay, if there is, how big? Is it this much? Is it this much? He said, no, it's much bigger. Is it bigger than my well? He said, yes, much bigger. How much bigger? This much bigger, that much bigger. And he began to bloat his belly to indicate how big. Is it this big, this big, this big? 5 times the size of my well, 10 times the size of my well. And the second frog kept saying, no, you don't understand. It is so big that you can't explain by just 5 times, 10 times the size of the well. But because this frog was continuously puffing up his stomach, his belly, eventually the belly exploded and the frog died. So Srila Prabhupada says, similarly, he gives many examples that there are variety of speculators today, whether they are philosophers or scientists or other types of analysts of the world around us. Their business is to speculate. They make so many theories based on their observation. They imagine many things based on what they observe. And then they concoct a variety of explanations for how the world is and how it should be. And usually, they tend to doubt anything that is in the Vedic scriptures, because their experience has been limited to what their senses have told them. Whatever they have seen so far, whatever they have heard, whatever they have smelt, whatever they have touched, etc. So their life is bound by sensory experience, which means the experience of the world is limited to what the senses have told them. So most modern branches of knowledge today depend on this kind of theorizing. So our modern scientific subjects, etc. It's not that these things did not exist in the Vedic culture. They also studied botany, they also studied so many varieties of knowledge of this world. But they did not consider this to be the all in all. You've all heard of Pratyaksha Praman, Anumana Praman, and Shabda Praman. How many of you have heard these three terms? Raise your hand. Everybody has heard. So, their only criterion is Pratyaksha Praman. And based on that Pratyaksha Praman, then they will make so many inferences. Pratyaksha Praman means all the information that can be understood by the senses, by the eyes, ears, etc. So they say that any information must be within the reach of our senses for us to accept it or believe it. So in this way, they make their theories thinking that everything that their senses tell them is the all in all. So this is called empirical evidence. So for everything they want empirical evidence. So when there is something that does not fit within the boundary of what their senses can perceive, then they challenge it. They don't believe it. So if you tell them that God exists, they will say, no, where is the proof? I don't see God anywhere here. Seeing is believing. Or if you tell them about the soul, they will not accept because they can't see. So they will have so many explorations of consciousness depending on the brain. The brain works in this way and that way. And certain signals will go in the brain at certain places. Any doctors here? No, only IT. Bangalore means only IT. No, no lawyers, no doctors thing. Only IT. Some doctor. Doctor? Yes? So the brain, very difficult to understand how it functions, isn't it? They try to understand human thought and emotions and intelligence, working of intelligence by how the neurons function, how the connections happen there. So many things they believe in. But these connections are also there in a dead body. So anyway, they try to explain things by just what they can perceive, what they can test out with their instruments, with their senses. So this is the limit of their understanding, of their knowledge and their theories. So then, when you tell them about God or about the soul, they say, no, no, no. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna explains the lifetime of this universe and the different days of Brahma and the lifetime of Brahma, so many millions and millions of years long. But they say, no, 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 we can't accept this because we don't know where is the proof. So in this way, because they have not experienced something, and they are living in the well of their own sensory perceptions, in their own imagination. Just like, sometimes a person who has a mental illness, he lives in his own world. He creates his own mental world and he lives within it. And he imagines that to be the reality. So people who also live within the world of their sensory experience alone are also, from a spiritual point of view, to be understood like this. I use the word alone because we also need sensory experience to survive. So we are not saying that you should not see, hear, smell things. Yes, you should. And without that, it will be very difficult for us to even live in this world. So that is essential. But that is not the only thing. There are many deeper things of life and of this world that cannot be accessed by only our senses. There are many things our eyes cannot see, our ears cannot hear, etc. But simply because we don't or cannot see or hear these things doesn't mean they don't exist. Then we are acting like the frog in the well. So this kind of logic, that because something doesn't fit into my experience of this world, my knowledge based on what the senses have told me, therefore it doesn't exist, that kind of logic is called the Kupa Manduka Nyaya, the logic of the frog in the well. So this is an explanation short explanation of this particular thing. So there are scientists, there are philosophers. So you see, the frog in the well is the one with the coat, the apron. In the laboratory, they will measure so many things. They'll say, okay, where can we create it in the laboratory? But not everything can be created in the laboratory. The soul can't be created. God can't be created. So here is our frog in the well. He's looking carefully at us. And he's bloating his stomach. You can see he lives in that well over there. That is not too far away from here, nearby here only. Village. He is bloating his belly and one day he will die with that. So Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur has also explained that there are many Samanvayavadis, or those who try to reconcile everything, especially those who are impersonalists, those who believe that the absolute truth is impersonal. So there are those frogs in the well who don't believe in the existence of anything beyond the senses. But there is one step further, another category of frogs in the well who accept that there is a reality, a spiritual reality beyond the world. But for them, the spiritual reality is impersonal, and the Brahmananda is a supreme perfection. Brahmananda means the happiness or so-called pleasure of merging into that impersonal spiritual light. They consider that to be supreme. They don't understand that there is something called Bhagavan, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, by loving whom one experiences the greatest possible ananda. That is called Premananda. So Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that actually Premananda is infinitely greater than Brahmananda. But the Brahmanandis or the Advaitavadis, their statement is, oh, you people are being fanatic by explaining or by believing that there is some spiritual world that exists beyond the material world, where there are planets and there are people there, there are living entities who serve Krishna or Vishnu. See, this is all your imagination. So they deride those who are personalist devotees of the Lord. So also this is an example of Kopamanduka Nyaya. So it's not only those who don't believe in a spiritual reality, but also those who think that the spiritual reality is only the impersonal. They can't accept that above and behind the impersonal, there is the Supreme Person, Krishna. How many of you have done Bhakti Shastri? Okay, you have studied Ishopanishad. Hiranmayena patrena satyasyapi hitam mukham tattan pushana pavrinu satya dharmaya drishtaye. So the devotee is praying to the Lord, please remove that haze of effulgence from in front of your face so I can behold your beautiful lotus face. Yes? So the devotee understands that this impersonal light is not everything. That the impersonal light is the bodily effulgence of that Supreme Person, Krishna. So therefore, if one restricts one understanding only to that impersonal light, it exists. But if you think of that as the ultimate and there is nothing beyond that on the spiritual platform, then that is also, according to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, an example of Kopamanduka Nyaya. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we hear this verse from the Hari Bhakti Sudhodaya. And Prahlad Maharaj, the great devotee of the Lord, is glorifying the process of bhakti. And he is making this statement after he has had personal darshan of the Supreme Lord. He says, Tvat sakshat karanahlada vishuddhabdhi sthitasya me sukham goshpadayante brahmanyapi jagadguru. He says, my dear Lord, ever since I have had your darshan, Tvat sakshat karana, since I have performed this action of taking your actual darshan face to face, ahlada, the bliss that I am experiencing is enormous. Vishuddha abdhi, it is like sthitasya, it is as if I have situated myself in the abdhi or the ocean, which is purified, pure ocean, Vishuddha abdhi. And what kind of the ahlada, so this ocean of infinite bliss. So now that I've had the darshan of your lotus face, I feel myself situated in this ocean of bliss. On the other hand, sukhani goshpadayante brahmani jagadguru, brahmani api jagadguru. So, O Jagadguru, O Guru of the whole universe, for those people who are engaged only in trying to merge into the impersonal Brahmajyoti, and they think that that is the ultimate. So for them, this is a very sorry state, because it is like the water in the hoof print of a calf. If a small ditch, when there is a little muddy water, or rather, when the soil is a little muddy, watery, and a calf steps on that soil, so there will be the imprint of the calf's hoof on that mud. And inside that ditch, that very small ditch, some water can accumulate. So how much is that water? Very little water. Can you compare that water to the water in an ocean? It's not possible. So similarly, Brahmananda, the so-called happiness of merging into the impersonal Brahmajyoti, is like that water in the ditch of the hoof print of a calf. And the bliss of Premananda, of serving the Supreme Lord, Shri Krishna, is like a vast, unlimited ocean. So here is also another example of Kopamanduka Nyaya. So many things just from one simple example. Yes? Now we'll come to the next sutra. Rajju Sarpanyaya. How many of you have heard this? Okay, few. Chaitanya Charitamrita or teachings of Lord Chaitanya, you should also read that. the logic of the rope and the snake. And what is a little story behind this? Just like there was a story for the previous one, Kupamanduka Nyaya, there's also a story for this Rajju Sarpa Nyaya, a short one. One time there was a man who was walking somewhere and it was a little dark. And he saw something on the road and looked like a snake. And he said, "Snake, snake." But when light was brought there, they all understood it was not a snake, it was a rope. Shri Shri Radha Radha Vinod ki Jai, Shri Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai ki Jai, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki Jai. So actually the person thought a rope lying on the street to be a snake. So that was a mistake. So this is a misconception. So to imagine misconceiving one thing for another is called an illusion. So this person was thinking the rope to be the snake. So that is an illusion. Now it doesn't mean that the rope does not exist or that there's nothing called a snake. But, so the rope is not an illusion. But thinking that the rope is a snake, that is an illusion. The rope exists, the snake exists somewhere else. So similarly, Srila Prabhupada explains that there are many people, especially those who follow the impersonalistic path. They say, the Mayavadis, they say that this world is false. Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya. That is their statement. So what does it mean when they say Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya? Brahma Satya, that we can understand. That the Supreme Lord is eternal truth? Yes. But what about Jagat Mithya? What is the meaning of Mithya? So they understand that this material world is actually false. It does not exist. It is an illusion. But Srila Prabhupada explains, and he does that according to the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that the material world exists, but it is temporary, and it is not what we think it is. For example, when we imagine ourselves to be the body, then that is illusion. The body is not illusion. The body is existing. But when I think as the soul that I am the body, that is illusion. So similarly, the material world exists. But when I think that this material world is meant for my enjoyment, it is my property, I want to be the controller of this, that is the illusion. So the material world exists as Krishna's energy. When we see the material world as being separate from Krishna, that is an illusion. So the material world is not an illusion. Seeing things in the material world separate from Krishna, separate from the spiritual teaching that Krishna has given, that is an illusion. So this is a logic often given by the Mayavadis, that they say that we imagine the world to be real, but it's just like the rope and the snake. They say, we turn it around and say, no, actually the rope exists and the snake exists, but imagining the rope to be the snake is false. So here are some examples. This is also, you can see the Rajju Sarpa. So rope can sometimes look like a snake also. So sometimes, or not sometimes, always, illusion or ignorance gives rise to fear. So Srila Prabhupada says that to get rid of fear, one must equip oneself with Vedic knowledge. Then one will become fearless and one can progress on the path of life. You have all heard or read in your school days maybe the poem about the 6 blind men and the elephant. Yes? The 6 blind men went to an elephant because they could not see anything. They also didn't know what an elephant was. So one of them caught hold of the trunk of the elephant One of them caught hold of the tusk of the elephant. One of them caught hold of the tail. One of them caught hold of the leg of the elephant. One of them touched the ears of the elephant. One of them touched the body of the elephant. And they all came to a different conclusion. Someone said, oh, the elephant is like a spear because he was touching the tusk. Someone said, oh, the elephant is like a rope because he was touching the trunk. Someone said the elephant is like a snake because he was touching the tail. Somebody said, oh, he is like a tree trunk because he was touching the legs. Somebody said the elephant is like a fan because he was touching the ears. In this way, they all came to different conclusions. They were all under some form of illusion. They were misconceiving one thing to be something else. So therefore, when in understanding spiritual knowledge, it is important that we take guidance from the scriptures, and then we will not be subject to illusion. Here is another example. Rajju Sarpa. Sometimes the illusion can be very strong. So there are varieties of such optical illusions that can. This is just one variety of illusions that we can create or that we experience. What does this look like? What is this? Is it a bridge that has many gateways, or a wall, or is it a series of ships? So each of you will see something. So this is how the material world, when we base upon our senses for knowledge, this is what we experience. Okay, next we'll come to another sutra called the Andha Pangu Nyaya. How many of you have heard of this? Andha means blind. Pangu means lame. So the logic of the blind man and the lame man. So again, like all the other Nyaya Sutras, there is a little story for this also. One time, a lame man and a blind man were walking in the forest. And the lame man or the blind man was holding the hand, and the lame man was giving directions. But then there was a fire. So they decided that the only way we can save ourselves is if we cooperate. So the lame man says, I can't run, but I can see, so I can give you the direction. And the blind man says, I can't see, but I can run. So if you direct me properly and you sit on my shoulders, then I can take you, both of us, to safety. So then what did they do? So then the lame man went on the back, or the blind man went, or rather the lame man went on the back of the blind man. So the blind man could walk, so he was walking, but he could not see. Therefore he was guided by the lame man who was seated on his shoulders or on his back. This is a very famous story from Aesop's Fables. Prabhupada also mentioned Aesop's Fables. Most of us have read Aesop's Fables in our childhood. So this is a story also where they saved themselves, the blind man and the lame man. So Srila Prabhupada said, one time when he was in America, he was talking to some students in a university. And he said, at that time in the 1960s, he said, look, America has a lot of money and we have the devotional culture. We don't have the money and you don't have the culture, the devotional culture. So you give us the money and we will give you the devotional culture. So together we can have a strong partnership. So in this way, by cooperating, we can do many wonderful things. The whole world will be benefited. Now, of course, somewhat the opposite is happening. Instead of us giving them the devotional culture, we are accepting their modern Western materialistic culture, and that is what we see all over the country, everywhere. whether it's our dressing, our language, or it is our habits, our practices, our attitudes, everything. Yes? So we are accepting their culture, their materialistic modern culture. We are giving up our devotional culture, which we should have preserved carefully and then exported. Now we are very much concerned about exports and imports and economics. But here we have our greatest export, spiritual knowledge and devotional culture. So we should be giving this to the rest of the world. But instead we are taking their culture and losing our precious culture. And of course we are putting so much emphasis on economic development, which is okay, because when money is there, then you can do many things with money, provided you have the spiritual knowledge and the devotional culture. If you simply focus on economic development and building big factories and software parks and so on and so forth, and everybody gets a lot of money to spend, and they don't have that devotional culture with them, they don't have the spiritual values, they've lost that, and they only have the materialistic Western culture, then what happens? There is chaos. There will be total degradation of the society, a collapse of all the social values. So therefore, we cannot afford to give up this precious gift, this vision that we have. We were at least not always like this. In ancient times, the Indian culture, we had the culture as well as the economic strength. But somewhere along the line, especially in the time when Prabhupada went to America, India was getting a lot of wheat imported from there. I think P20 something it was called, I forget what it is. So there was a lot of wheat imports of food and everything else. So we were depending for our economic sustenance on America and Europe and so on. Now we are not doing that so much, but still we are, in the course of our economic development, we are losing everything. In any case, this was the context in which Srila Prabhupada said this. Another interesting way in which we can look about this is, okay, here is an example of how we can give our culture to them, but rather we are doing the opposite. Now Bangalore has become like this now, on the side, right hand side. And America is becoming like the left hand side. Because now we hope. But still there are so many temples all over the world where people are hankering for Vedic culture. But here is an interesting explanation. We all know about the 4 varnas, which is on the basis of birth, janma, is it? No. It is on the basis of guna and karma. What activities do you do and what modes of nature are you under? Sattva, Rajas, Tamas, or what combination of them? So Brahmana is one who's under Sattva, a Kshatriya is one who's under Rajas, a Vaishya is under combination of Sattva and Rajas, or Rajas and Tamas, I beg your pardon, and Shudra is one who's under Tamas. So whatever may be our specific individual situation, we all have different propensities, so, and different talents, different abilities. None of them is good or bad. Whatever abilities we have, if we can cooperate together and use them in the service of Lord Krishna, that is perfect. Now somebody may be able to sing very nicely. Another devotee may not be able to sing, but he may be able to speak very nicely about Krishna. So the two can combine. One will sing for Krishna, the other will speak about Krishna. There may be some other devotees who are very good in decorating the deities. So they will install a small altar and beautifully decorate that altar at some program, preaching program somewhere. Then there are other devotees who are very good in cooking. So they will cook nice meals and then they will serve prasadam to everybody. So in this way, different devotees have different skills, different abilities, different interests. So if we bring them all together for the higher purpose of pleasing Krishna, then everything will be perfect. So this is another way we can understand this whole idea. So the next one is called the Kak Taliya Nyaya. How many of you have heard of this sutra? Kak means crow. Taliya means referring to not this tali, but the Tala Vriksha, the palm tree. So the short story connected to this is that one time a crow came and settled on the branch of a palm tree. And as soon as that happened, a palm fruit from that tree fell to the ground. So some philosophers, some people were watching this, and as they watched this happened, so one person started saying, actually, the crow landed on the branch, and because of the force of that, the fruit fell. So the other person said, no, that's not how it happened. It's just a coincidence. The fruit was going to fall anyway, and just as it was falling, the crow came and landed on the beach. So it is a coincidence. In this way, they all started explaining what was happening, whether there was a correlation between the coming of the settling of the landing of the crow on the branch with the falling of the fruit, whether there was any causation, that means it was a cause of the other, or just a coincidence. So they all began to debate, and it became very heated. And they debated for hours and hours on this. So therefore this sutra, Nyaya Sutra, Kakataliya Nyaya, is employed to illustrate the futility of those people who simply waste time in idle criticism and argumentation. Now, what does it really matter? What the truth of the matter is, we don't know. Maybe the fruit was ripe and it was falling on its own, and maybe it was just tenderly getting attached. It would have fallen, but because of the force of the crow's landing, it got shaken and it fell. Had it been raw, even if the crow had landed, still it would not have fallen. So a combination of things could be there. So why is that worth so much of argumentation? So similarly in this world as well, there is endless argumentation. We go on and on arguing about the most useless topics. If you just look at the television or newspaper, don't look, but I'm just saying as an example, if you just look, people are arguing and arguing endlessly about unlimited topics. Is there really a need to waste valuable human life on these discussions and arguments? And each one is trying to prove his point and show that the other person is wrong. So this kind of argumentation is futile. So here is that example of the crow and the Tal Vriksha. And he must have also got alarmed when the fruit fell and so many people were arguing. So the crow also fled from there. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has explained that there is a significance to all the asuras that were killed by Krishna in Vrindavan. Each asura, according to the Thakura, represents a certain demon or a certain demoniac tendency. So for each of them, he has identified the particular ailment, mental ailment or attitudinal problem, or the certain anartha that is equal to that demon. So similarly, for this whole idea of useless argumentation, there is Trinavarta. You know, Trinavarta was a whirlwind demon. He came in the form of a whirlwind, and he came strongly and swept up baby Krishna all the way up. This was soon after the Putana Leela, Putana Vadh Leela. And Krishna, of course, even though he was in the form of a baby, but he was still the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna was, is, and always will be the Supreme Lord in any form, in any situation, at any time. So he retains all his power, whether he's a small child or apparently an adult. So Krishna used his yogic powers and became so heavy that ultimately he killed Trinavarta and he landed very safely on the ground without any trace of injury. So, such argumentation, we can say here is a Trinavarta-like person, yes? So similarly, in our society also, of devotees, we should try to avoid this kind of useless argumentation about different things. And there are times when we should just let go. Sometimes it spoils relationships amongst devotees as well. One time, one of our sannyasis was approached by two devotees, as often happens, and they had some difference of opinion which had led to some quarrel. And it had led to a spoiling of relationships between those two devotees. It was becoming quite serious. And they came before this sannyasi and each began to present his point of view. And he said this, and each one was very articulate, forceful in presenting his side and showing why the other person was wrong. The second devotee was doing the same thing for himself and trying to prove how the first devotee was wrong. And each of them was trying to argue in such a way as to show that I am right and he is wrong. So this was going on. Finally, sannyasi, he said, hold it, hang on. So he spoke to both of them and he said just one thing. He said, do you want to be right or do you want to be Krishna conscious? Think about this. You may win your argument and prove that you are right and he is wrong. And maybe you're right in that also. Maybe you're actually correct when you say that you're right and he's wrong. Or maybe he's correct when he says that he's right and you are wrong. But regardless of who is right, who is wrong, maybe both of you are right, maybe both of you are wrong, partially right, partially wrong. It could be anything. But what is more important to you? To be Krishna conscious or to be right in that argument? So in trying to argue endlessly about things that may not really matter in the long run, it is very insignificant in comparison to what we have to do in our life to become pure devotees. What does it matter if something happened this way or that way? Even if I'm wrong, right, if I accept also that I'm wrong, what is the big damage that will be done? Instead of getting into useless arguments and debates, there is no need for that. Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, they exhibited this idea. On some occasions, there were some so-called Digvijayi Pandits, some so-called scholars who were traveling all over, challenging other scholars to debate on various points of logic and so on and so forth. And then when they defeated that other scholar, they would take a letter in writing, a Vijay Patra, where that scholar would say, I have been defeated by this Digvijay Pandit, what his name. And then he would carry it and show his conquest. See, I have conquered all these scholars in argument, in debate. So sometime they would come to Rupa and Sanatan Goswami one. So Rupa and Sanatan immediately signed, because they didn't want to bother wasting time in arguing with a foolish person like that. He may be a scholar, but he's still foolish, because he's wasting his valuable human life in such pointless argumentation. So they signed. Then he came to Jiva Goswami. Actually, he had heard that Rupa and Sanatana are the topmost in Vrindavan, so he should go there. But when he got this letter from them, he was thinking, now my purpose is achieved. But somebody said, look, they have a nephew, Jiva Goswami. He is the upcoming scholar. So sooner or later, he will be able to challenge you. So right now, you nip it in the bud and you go and defeat him and get this sign from him also. So then this scholar went to Jiva Goswami and said, look, your uncles, Rup and Sanatan Goswamis, have signed this letter of defeat, that I have defeated them. And Jiva Goswami saw this and he was enraged. And he was thinking, my uncles, out of humility and out of very high level of Krishna consciousness, have refused or have easily signed this. But this scholar thinks that they have done so because they were actually defeated by him. So what a fool. How arrogant he is. So I must teach him a lesson to protect the reputation of my uncles and to protect the reputation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. So I must argue with him. I must debate with him. And he agreed for the debate, and he thoroughly demolished this so-called scholar in debate. And that scholar went away with his head hung low in shame, because now he was thoroughly defeated by just a young lad. But when Rupa Goswami heard about this, he was very angry. He said, Vrindavan is not the place for pride. And you wanted to show your scholarship, to show how brilliant you are, so go from here. So Jiva Goswami was shattered, but he started hiding in some place and doing severe tapasya out of repentance. Finally, when Sanatan Goswami was wandering in Braj, some villagers told him about some Baba, some sadhu, who's praying for Krishna, who is fasting and who lives in a crocodile hole. And immediately Sanatan understood that this was Jiva Goswami. He quickly went there and rescued Jiva and brought him back. And Sanatan Goswami was the older brother of Rupa Goswami. So he came to Rupa and said, Rupa, what are the principles of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? You have forgotten those principles. So Sanatan, being the older brother, Rupa Goswami naturally said, okay, you are my elder brother, like my guru. So you are telling me that I have made a mistake. So please tell me what is my mistake. So then he said, okay, keep on mentioning what are the principles of the philosophy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So one by one, Rupa Goswami started mentioning, and he came to Jive Daya, that you must have mercy on all the souls, the conditions. But this was a double meaning, because what Sanatan Goswami was trying to say is that not only you must have compassion on all living entities, but you must also have compassion on Jiva, our nephew. You have made a mistake, you have misunderstood. So Rupa Goswami understood and brought Jiva Goswami back. So anyway, so there is futile argumentation, and sometimes there is argumentation to establish the supremacy of Krishna consciousness. Like, for example, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the sannyasis at Banaras, the Mayavadi sannyasis, or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, or the debates that Madhvacharya and Ramanujacharya also entered into to demolish competing ideologies which were false. So sometimes devotees do get into that, but it has to be done very carefully. But what is referred to here in this Kakataliya Nyaya, the Trinavarta mentality, is useless argumentation for no fruitful purpose. So, as Prabhupada also mentioned that in connection with the Jiva fall down issue, where did the Jiva come from? From Goloka Vrindavan or from the impersonal Brahman? And then Srila Prabhupada said one time, Kakataliya Nyaya. Don't forget, don't spend too much time about this. The important thing is that we have come into this material world. How we came, when we came is not so important. Now we have to get out of this material world and we have to go to the spiritual world. That is important. So anyway, so yeah, so this is just some, the devotee who was making this PPT put this, two arguing Pandits and how people quarrel, because this was, I think, meant for some college students, so he has put in all these things. Yeah, how we fell from the spiritual to material world, a point of great debate. Who are we? How did we get here and why? And we can go on talking about it. But let us spend our time getting out of here rather than wondering how we got here. Okay, so tomorrow is late now, and tomorrow morning we'll continue with a few other Nyaya Sutras. What time tomorrow? 8 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. I know it's a working day. If you are able to come, it's fine. If not, you can see it on the Zoom call or something. Okay. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. God Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. I think it's late, no? I don't mind, but I think it's a little, one or two questions, okay.
The topics is very interesting and logical.
So those who are getting late, you are welcome to rise and go. And if anyone has questions, one or two questions we can take now. Yes, somebody has a question there.
Thank you for so briefly telling us about this whole points from Prabhupada. So about this Brahma, the Maharaj said that example of the footprint of a car. So that is also even for crossing the way. So when we give an example that Acharya is swimming the whole ocean.
Correct, correct. So that is also given for that, to explain how by bhakti we can cross over the ocean of material existence as easily as stepping over a puddle which is in the hoofprint of a calf. Yes, that is from Brahma's prayers. So that analogy can be used differently. Hoofprint of a calf is a topic, and you can use it for different analogies.
So is that, I mean, is there a connection in the sense that Brahmananda is as insignificant as
There it is a question of the quantity and the quality. The ocean, first of all, compared to a very small puddle. There is no comparison at all. The happiness of Krishna Prema and the happiness of impersonal Brahman realization. And also the quality, because this is Vishuddha Abdhi. It is Ahlada Vishuddha Abdhi. It is an ocean of pure happiness. Infinite ocean. So qualitatively and quantitatively, this shows a difference. In the analogy that you mentioned, it is meant to show that bhakti enables you to cross over something that is otherwise insurmountable with great ease. As much ease as you can by stepping over a puddle. That is the idea. So the purpose of the analogy is different. And we'll discuss a little more about analogies tomorrow when we speak of Chandra Shakha Nyaya or Shakha Chandra Nyaya. Okay? One last question.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much for your class. Regarding Adi, in the Vallabha Math, there was
Regarding what?
Debating.
Arguing, yes.
Debating.
Yes.
So there was once, I don't remember exactly, but I think Vallabha Math, Vallabha Sampradaya, and then our Sampradaya. So finally, I think we wrote one book and then said that okay, ours is bonafide and etc. So right now we have Madhava line and Sri Sampradaya line, etc. So if a situation arises, when should we decide that okay, we should get into a debate, or when we should decide that okay, it's not for me?
better we don't get into it, because we should be respectful to the conclusions of all these sampradayas, and we follow the conclusions of the sampradaya into which we are connected. But at the same time, we respect the other sampradayas. In many broad issues and specific points, there is unity. There is difference only in some subtle points, some fine points, and some major points as well. But ultimately, because they're all bona fide Vaishnava sampradayas, and they also have had in the past great acharyas from whom we also draw great inspiration and understanding. Our acharyas have also taken a lot of input from them, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur took a lot from Yamunacharya and so on. So, and Baladev Vidyabhushan drew heavily from Madhava's teachings, like this. So basic Vaishnava teachings are there. So we should respectfully understand that there may be some differences, but we should not criticize or cause offense. So better to avoid some debate. If at all some clarity is needed about the difference, that can be done in a very respectful way, if at all that is at any time needed. Okay? All right. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. God Premanande Hari Hari Bo.